Good morning. I'm Jordan Slocum, and this is the Doane College Review on 99.5 KUTT. Every Saturday morning from 8 until 8:30, we take a look at what's going on around athletics, academics, and more at Doane College. On today's program, we talk to Doane head track and field coach Ed Fye, Doane head football coach Matt Franzen, and Dan Clanton, associate professor of philosophy and religion at Doane. Of course, 99.5 KUTT is your home for Doane College football, and the Doane College football team will be in the NAIA playoffs later on today for the first time since 1999. They'll be taking on Tabor College, kickoff at 1 o'clock, pregame at 12:30 here on KUTT. And later in this program, we'll hear from Doane football coach Matt Franzen. But right now, it's time to hear from Ed Fye, the head track and field coach at Doane. First off, Coach, we're not too far away now from the start of the indoor track and field season. What work have you been able to do with the teams in the last few weeks?
Oh, in the fall, we start out just 4 days a week, and it's a train-to-train. We do a lot of core strength. We do tire training, circuit training, because we got a lot of new faces so they can train together, get to know one another a little bit. And we do team bonding, new backpack program. They did a tailgate party for the Doane football team and painted up Go Doane and ran around. So just building chemistry and getting them fit so we can get them going. And we actually started about 3 weeks ago to get them going to get ready for the indoor in January.
You mentioned the football team. You were an assistant coach for the football team the last time they were in the postseason. How excited are you for the playoff run for them?
I coached it for 18 years, and then I played at Doane. So, I mean, you don't forget those trips and the journey and the people and the sacrifices to be able to get to that point to play at the next level. So it's pretty neat. Matt's done a tremendous job and his coaching staff getting those kids back and believing that they could do that. And I think you've watched it over the last 6 years come to this point. So that's pretty exciting for Doane and everybody, and it's pretty neat that him and Bessler are both alumni to get it back to where it is. And we have a lot of doubles, and Andy Tatum and Drew Klein and Simon and Berrickman. So we got a few doubles that are pretty important.
Talking to Doane track and field coach Ed Fye, what's the overall outlook for the track and field teams so far?
Oh, we'll be strong. We have a really strong men's team with seniors and some great leadership that we have there too. We're really young from the juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. So we'll need a lot of leadership to get those younger kids ready to go. And girls, their junior and senior classes are really strong and got some really good leaders on there as well. So we're pretty excited about conference and what we might be able to do at the national level.
Over the last few months, how has recruiting been for this year?
Oh, recruiting starts all the time, I guess, so you never really get a break from recruiting. And that's where I am now, on the road trying to recruit and get some kids to come to Doane. And a lot of kids that are on the girls' side are wanting to commit a lot earlier than a lot of the guys kind of wait and kind of want to see what they do with their senior year. So girls were probably a little further along with some commitments and some people. And on the men's side, it usually takes a little while to get some commitments from that group.
Talking to Doane College head track and field coach Ed Fye. Coach, what are some goals you have for both the men and the women in the next few weeks?
Our goal setting is probably a little bit different. We really don't talk about winning conference or going out to win nationals. We try to do more about building chemistry and building relationships and learning to trust one another and believing in one another and believing in your coaching staff and the things that they can do for you. And if we do that right, then the wins and that thing will come. Our kids set goals. We make them set individual and team goals, and their goals are to win conference and be very competitive this year on both sides at the national level.
talking to Doane track and field coach Ed Fye. Last question, Coach. A few months ago, a former member of the men's team, Jared Skirmans, announced that he's going to be going out for the Olympic team in the discus. How exciting has that been to just watch his progress over the last few years?
It's been fun. We've been pretty fortunate the last 4 years with him, watching him grow to win the U.S. championships. And B.J. Lawrence actually ran in the Olympics and got a bronze medal in the Olympics, and actually anchored against our U.S. championships against Usain Bolt. And then Gail Wilkin is top 10 decathlete in the United States, which is a senior for us right now. And the Whistler went to the U.S. Junior National. So we've had a lot of fun at the national level with some of our kids, and it's exciting. And Jared's come back and did a really good job of supporting the track team. And if he went to a different level, he didn't know if he would get where he needed to, just because him and Coach Dunnigan really hit it off. So it was pretty neat summer for us to follow our kids. And when you can be the best in the United States and be from Doane, that's pretty unique.
That was Ed Fye, the head track and field coach for Doane College, here on the Doane College Review. And the indoor track and field season officially gets started on January 9th. You're listening to the Doane College Review on 99.5 KUTT. There is more running that'll be taking place today, in fact. 2 members of the track and field team, also members of the cross-country team, will be competing in the NAIA Cross-Country Championships later today. For the women, that's Marissa DeWispeler, who finished first in the GPAC women's meet. For the men, that'll be Eric Weirs. Both will be competing today, once again, in the NAIA National Championships. Also on the schedule for today, members of the wrestling team will be competing at the Nebraska Kearney Open. And both the men's and women's basketball teams will be at home facing Mount Marty College. Tip-off for the women's game is at 2, with the men at 4. And of course, later on 99.5 KUTT, the Doane football team will be competing in the first round of the NAIA football playoffs, on the road against Tabor College, in an 8-versus-9 matchup. Kickoff is set for 1 o'clock, with pregame at 12:30 here on 99.5 KUTT. For Doane coach Matt Franzen, his team picked up its first loss of the year last week in a tough one against Morningside.
Well, I think several things. I think Morningside is a great team. They've got a great team this year. I think they played their best game, and that's talking to people who had seen them play throughout the season, and they said they played the best game they've played all year in that game. And I mean, credit to them. The conference championship game, that's when you want to play your best, and I think they did. We didn't play very well, and so I think that's something that I hope we can use that going into this week, because for us that was the first game that we played in the national game of the week a couple times, and had both of them at home. But now we were on the road in a conference championship game, and it was really the big stage. And I think we just didn't handle it real well. So we need to do a better job this week, being on the road on the big stage again. And like I said, I think that experience can't help, I think, but to help us to some degree.
Did anything on the field jump out as maybe a weakness that you hadn't identified for that game?
Well, I think defensively, I think Morningside probably schemed us a little bit with some of their receivers and with their quarterback. I mean, Ryan Kasdorf is going to have a good chance, I think, to be a first-team All-American quarterback, meaning he's the best quarterback in the country, and they protected well. We've got to be able to pressure the quarterback. That's what we've done well all season, and their offensive line really gave us some problems getting to the quarterback, and I think that's where you saw several of those long completions. Offensively, I think we struggled to run the ball, and that really hurt us. And we've been a run team first and foremost this year, and with Nate Meyer, that's kind of where we've hung our hat. And obviously Nate didn't play in that game, and I think it showed. And I don't know, on that day, I don't know if Nate being in the game would have made a difference in the outcome. But I do think that him being there, playing full speed, and that, I think, for our offense and even for our entire team, I think that just gives us an element and something that we were definitely missing on Saturday.
Talking to Doane head football coach Matt Franzen, how has the team's mood been throughout this week?
It's been good. I think our guys were happy to get back to practice on Tuesday, knowing that we made the postseason. That's been a goal, and we're happy that we accomplished that. But also coming off of last weekend, we wanted to get back on the field and start to plan for a different opponent and put it behind us. And so, like I said, I think just being on the field on Tuesday, the energy was good, and we were practicing in the rain. It rained off and on the whole practice, and it was damp and not a whole lot of fun to be outside, but our guys were great with it, and our freshmen and our scout team guys, a lot of energy, and so that was exciting to see. I think the attitude is right.
Are there any areas you really focused on this week in practice?
Well, defensively, stopping the run, and with Tabor, and when you see them play, you'll see that they are a run-first team, and they're going to run second and third, and they're about 80% of the time they're going to run the ball, and so that's where we're game planning them. Obviously, we need to be able to stop the run. We've done a good job with that all season, and then for our offense, looking at their defense, it's a similar approach. We feel like we need to be able to run the ball, and they have a good defensive line, so we need to do, I think, a better job, no question, than we did a week ago up front in the offensive line and that. But being able to run the ball and then set some things up in the passing game off of our run game. That's kind of what we're looking at. And so hoping that Nate Meyer will be closer to full speed this week. He's going to play. And like I said, hoping that he's close to full speed. And I think that'll give us a little bit of that element back.
Talking to Doane head football coach Matt Franzen, with Tabor being a run-heavy team as opposed to Morningside, who really was so strong passing, is that a better matchup, you think, for your team?
Well, I think it will be. You know, with Morningside, I think that's an offense where they do both equally well. And I think if we take away the pass, they're going to run the ball very well. And if we tighten down on the run, then they're going to try and throw the ball over the top of you. And with Tabor, not to say that they can't throw the ball, but they are a little more one-dimensional on offense. And so to be able to step up and stop the run, if we can do that, that's the game plan, and I think then that puts us in a pretty good position.
On the Blue Jay offense, do any individual guys jump out to you on film?
Well, their quarterback, very athletic, runs the ball well, and with their offense, it's an option type of offense, and they run some veer option where they're going to read the defensive lineman and see who they're going to take, and then, like I said, he can pull and run, and he's a threat that way. But a good athlete. He's the player of the year, for the KCAC conference, the offensive player of the year, and so that's the one that really jumps out at you. And then they've got running backs that are athletic across the board, big fullback, and that. So, the thing there, I think what we need to really do is tackle well. I think from a scheme standpoint, no question that we're ready to go, but against a team like this, you have to tackle well. You miss a tackle or two, and all of a sudden, good athletes are off to the races.
Switching to their defense, in terms of points per game, they're third right now in the country. What do you see looking at that D?
Well, they have a solid run defense. They also play very good pass defense. A lot of man coverage with their corners, and they're athletic there. And then, like we said, against the run, they do a really good job. Their defensive ends are very athletic, probably a different style of player than we've seen most of the year, where they're going to be standing up on the ends a lot of the time, and they're tall and long, and like I said, athletic. And so we want to be able to run at those guys. I don't think they're guys that want to get into a real slugfest with offensive linemen who are going to be running and double teaming and that sort of thing right at them. They want to play more in the perimeter, and so but that's what they are. They're an athletic defense. They have good speed, and I'd say they're good in the defensive line and also in the secondary.
Talking to Doane football coach Matt Franzen. Last question, Coach. What are the biggest things your team has to do to win this first-round playoff game?
Well, we need to find a way offensively to score some points, and like you said, they're right up there in points allowed on the season. They haven't given up much in their conference games, and we need to find a way to put some points on the board. Defensively, we need to stop the run, and that's what they want to do, and that's how they're going to try and attack and break things open in the run game. And so we need to do what we've done all season, and which is to stop the run. And then the one area that we feel like looking at film and with what we do, that we can maybe make some hay is in the special teams. And I think with our special teams units, we need to go in and try and make some plays there in control field position. And so I think when you look at the last outing we had, we need to control the ball much better and take care of the ball much better and be willing to punt. You know, we had 6 turnovers last week against Morningside, and if you turn the ball over 6 times in the playoffs, every team you play is going to be good, and you're going to get beat. And so obviously we need to control the ball, take care of the ball, punt when we need to, and play great defense.
That was Doane football coach Matt Franzen here on the Doane College Review. And remember to listen to Doane versus Tabor on 99.5 KUTT. Kickoff today at 1 o'clock, pregame at 12:30. This is the Doane College Review on 90.5 KUTT. Still to come, we'll talk with Dan Clanton, Associate Professor of Religion and Philosophy at Doane. With the fall season coming to the end for various sports, the GPAC announced their all-conference teams for a number of sports. The football team was very well represented. In total, 24 players were recognized, with 7 on the first team, 5 on the second team, and 13 receiving honorable mentions. Getting named to the first team were running back Nate Meyer, left guard Blake Bunner, kicker Jordan Peterson, kick returner Drew Klein, defensive end Aaron Hanlon, linebacker Garrett Borcher, and safety Cole Wiseman. And on the second team were tight end Kellen Unvert, offensive tackle Zach Reeves, nose tackle Drew Kruger, linebacker Andy Tatum, and cornerback Ben Muff. Making the all-conference list for men's soccer on the first team for Doane were Gabe Garbin and Mark Wallace. On the second team, TJ Kulowick and Quinn Selby. For the Doane women's soccer team, making the first team were both Sarah Cushing and Megan Voigt. And on the volleyball team, making second team, was Shelby Milzak. Additionally, 2 soccer players were named as Academic All-Americans. On the women's first team was Sarah Cushing, and on the men's second team, Gabe Garbin. As for results from the last week, things were pretty quiet overall. Back on Saturday, the Doane wrestling team had an impressive showing in the Bacone duels. They faced off against 4 different schools and were victorious in all 4 duels. 40-9 over Bethany, 45-12 over Central Baptist, 28-12 over Wayland Baptist, and 25-16 over Bacone. Then on Wednesday, the basketball teams traveled to Midland. Both came up just short. The Doane men's final was 103-90 in favor of Midland. The women's game went to overtime, with Midland just getting the edge, 89-84. You're listening to the Doane College Review on 90.5 KUTT, where every Saturday morning from 8 to 8:30 we look at the athletics, academics, and more from around Doane College. Now on the program, it's time to talk to Dan Clanton. Dan is an associate professor of philosophy and religion at Doane. First off, Dan, one of the things that you're involved with at Doane is the ministry program. How did that come about at Doane?
Well, one of the reasons that we decided to look into developing a program like this is that our students are always wanting to know, and their parents, as you might imagine, are always wanting to know what's the practical application of the knowledge that they're getting in class. So with that in mind, and given the fact that our students are very, very interested in service, we just thought that this would be a natural fit for students that were interested in religious studies, or students that were interested in maybe doing some more specific curricular work with their own faith tradition. So what we came up with was a ministry program that includes a major and a minor, and we've had pretty good luck so far.
What are some of the things that really stand out to you about the program?
Well, there are a wide range of courses that we ask students to take. So it's not the case that if students want to complete successfully the ministry emphasis or minor, that they only take religious studies classes, because we take seriously the fact that there's a range of possibilities that students might be interested in that come to our program. So we started out thinking that we might have some students that are interested in traditional pulpit ministry. We might have some students that are interested in youth ministry, in music ministry. We might even have some students that are interested in living out their faith commitments in the context of working with non-governmental organizations or not-for-profit organizations. So even though we do have as kind of a foundation some of the basic religious studies courses that we offer, we also have a kind of cluster of classes from disciplines like accounting and business, communication, psychology, even music and leadership that students can choose from given their own interests. We also, and we're very excited about this, we also require an internship for both the major and the minor. Because again, we want students to come out of this program with the best possible preparation, practical preparation, for the next step, whatever that step may be, whether it's applying to a seminary, whether it's being the most qualified candidate for a position. We're just looking to prepare students to really live out their faith commitment in the best way that they can.
This is the Doane College Review on 99.5 KUTT, talking to Dan Clanton, a associate professor of philosophy and religion at Doane. Now, do you have to be a Christian or have to have a certain, be a part of a certain mindset to be in the program?
No, we specifically set it up that way. Doane College has a long-standing relationship with the Congregationalist Church. We were founded by Congregationalists, and we value that relationship greatly. I do a lot of work with First Plymouth Church in Lincoln, and the senior pastor at First Plymouth, Reverend Jim Keck, sits on our board of directors. But even though the vast majority of our students self-identify as Christian, we didn't want to have a program like some of the more denominationally affiliated schools in Nebraska have. So as far as I know, we are the only non-denominational pre-ministry program in the state, so that a student who's Jewish, a student who's Muslim, a student who's Buddhist can go through our program and then be prepared, as I mentioned, to take the next step in living out a kind of practical commitment to their faith tradition. So we absolutely don't presume that students that go through this program would have to be Christian, even though right now all of the students that we have in the program are Christian.
And I think one thing that maybe college in general helps out with is that there's usually a very diverse amount of students, whereas someone who might grow up in a small town, there's a smaller selection of beliefs in there, but obviously you get to meet more people, and even within Christendom, obviously there's a huge array of people all over each side of the scale in beliefs, and then obviously same thing when you go to people who are of different religions or non-religious.
Absolutely. When I was growing up in not a small town, but a fairly decent-sized town outside of Little Rock, Arkansas, we had a pretty large public school system, and there were only 2 Jewish students in that whole public school system, and it was my best friend and his brother. So I know what it's like to come from a background where you have limited exposure to various faith traditions, but it's certainly, I think, helpful for students to come into a place like Doane where they are going to encounter folks that have beliefs different from them. In fact, the basic 100-level class that we require of everyone in the religious studies major or minor, or the ministry major or minor, is our class on comparative religions, where they're going to be exposed to a wide array of religious traditions, because you can't get along in today's pluralistic and international society if you don't know something about the religious traditions of our world.
And it's good to provide a location where you can openly discuss the differences between cultures, because obviously, you bring up religion with a lot of people and it's going to turn into a very heated conversation quickly. And with the program, you have the opportunity to really explore that, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Traditionally, there are 2 things you're not supposed to talk about in polite conversation, right? So it's religion and politics. And I tell my students all the time, we're going to talk about both of them. So you better get used to it.
And because obviously, for better or for worse, politics and religion often intertwine, whether they want to or not.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Talking to Dan Clanton, Associate Professor of Philosophy and Religion at Doane, here on the Doane College Review. What are some of the most common questions and interests students have when they are talking to you?
Oh, students, well, it depends if I'm talking to just them or their parents. As I mentioned earlier, parents, by and large, are always interested to ask the question, what can they do with a degree in religion? And my answer has always been, what can't you do? The kind of skills, the kind of broad knowledge you're going to get in our program is going to allow you to be extremely marketable. Students have usually a different set of questions. I mean, students usually want to know many more kind of abstract questions. So students that come in that self-identify as Christian, that take the comparative religions class, as you mentioned earlier, many of these students have never read sacred texts of other traditions. They've never studied the rituals of other traditions. So once we open students up to that, then the questions just seem to gush out, and many of them are questions that these students didn't even know that they had. So when we have those kind of light bulb moments in class, those are extremely rewarding.
And the amazing thing is that even though obviously there's a lot of differences between different traditions, I think a lot of students maybe don't realize how many things they share in common between faiths all around the world.
Absolutely. In fact, yesterday in the comparative religions class, I showed students a kind of terrifying-looking image on the surface, but it was an image of Shiite Muslims celebrating a holiday called Ashura, which commemorates the assassination of a very important figure within Shia Islam. And the image was of a whole group of Arab men who were all carrying swords, who had blood all over them. And I told the students that this image on the surface might seem to validate all of the horrible things that you've been told about Islam, but let's talk about what they're actually doing. And once we started talking about the function of that ritual and what the participants in that ritual imagine that they get from it, students were able to see, especially our Christian students, because I specifically paralleled that with the celebration of Mass or Communion, Lord's Supper, whatever you call it. They began to see that this actually wasn't a terrifying image. It actually became kind of familiar to them because they were able to recognize that the function of the ritual that they were familiar with was the same as the function of the ritual that these men in the picture were celebrating.
Talking to Dan Clatton, Associate Professor of Philosophy and Religion at Doane. Last question, Dan. I read up on you that you kind of focus a lot of times on how religion and pop culture intertwine. Do you see a major difference in how things are looking now between religion and pop culture versus maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the Internet's completely changed the game. When I first started doing religion and pop culture, sort of meant let's watch a whole bunch of movies and see if they ever quote Bible. We've moved far beyond that now. We've moved to larger questions about how does video game culture, for example, how does that serve a religious function? How do people get religion from various activities in which they participate? How is it that that traditional religious institutions have started to employ secular techniques like marketing, like what we might imagine to be secular music into services? And what does that mean for the transformation of traditional religious practice? It's a fascinating field, and you can do so many things with it.